In the wilderness, Alina's season of isolation. Chapter 5. After her encounter by the river, Alina felt invigorated with new purpose. She began devoting herself to prayer, meditation, and studying the scriptures, feeling a deep need to understand the path laid before her. Yet, despite the newfound fire in her heart, her life seemed to remain quiet and ordinary. Days turned into months, and months into years, with no apparent change or significant breakthrough. At times, she wondered if she had misunderstood the elderly man's words. Was she truly chosen for something great? During this time, Alina grew in faith and patience as God shaped her character. She remembered the stories of great figures from the scriptures who also endured long seasons of preparation before stepping into their destined roles. She thought of Paul, who spent 3 years in study and prayer before beginning his missionary journeys, which changed countless lives. She reflected on Joseph, who waited for 13 years in prison and hardship before rising to prominence in Egypt, where his wisdom would save nations from famine. Alina pondered how Moses lived 40 years in the desert, being trained in humility and trust in God, before leading his people out of bondage. Even Elijah, the great prophet, spent 3 years ministering to just 2 people while in hiding, yet witnessed God's miraculous power in the most unlikely circumstances. Alina began to understand that her own journey was not wasted, even if it felt slow and uneventful. Her time of waiting was a period of refinement, of deepening her relationship with God and learning to trust in His timing. It was during these quiet years that she encountered small but significant moments that shaped her character. She learned to rejoice in humble tasks, finding joy in serving others and sharing her faith with those who crossed her path. Though it felt as if she was hidden from the world, Alina's faith was being strengthened for the day when her calling would finally unfold. She began to see that God was working in her, even when outward circumstances seemed stagnant. She recalled the elderly man's words about being transformed from glory to glory and realized that transformation was not instantaneous, but a continuous process of surrender and renewal. There were times when Alina questioned whether she had the strength or wisdom to fulfill the purpose laid out for her. But in those moments, she remembered Elijah's 3 years in solitude, how his faith had been refined through a season of hiddenness. If Elijah could experience God's miraculous provision during such a time, could she not also trust that God was equipping her even now? Her waiting years were not empty. They were full of divine lessons that prepared her for the greater works ahead. Like Paul, Joseph, Moses, and Elijah, she began to understand that this period was not just preparation for a calling, but an essential part of the calling itself. It was in these moments that she discovered the richness of God's grace, the depth of His love, and the power of His refining fire. Alina's journey was still far from complete, but she embraced the process, knowing that God was shaping her for a purpose far beyond what she could see. She realized that the promise given to her by the river was not about reaching a destination, but about the transformation that occurred along the way. And so, with a heart renewed in faith, she continued to walk forward, one day at a time, trusting that God's timing was perfect and that her season of preparation was leading her ever closer to the fulfillment of her destiny. As she sat by the river, lost in thought, the familiar presence of the elderly man returned to her mind, a reminder of the wisdom he had imparted to her during their last encounter.